Hi, I'm Seth Goldman. I think of myself as an activist and an active person, and so for me, creating Honest Tea was a way to quench a thirst that I always seem to generate, and Honest Tea is the vehicle for which I'm able to be an activist around causes I care about. And just to build a little bit on the Red Sox, for me, being an entrepreneur is a lot like being a Red Sox fan. It means living with defeat, like this past season, being able to bounce back next season and saying, you know, we're going to make it this time. And the only way a good Red Sox fan can continue to sort of survive is in believing it. So it's helped me build Honest Tea as well.
We certainly know our share of defeat, don't we? So I guess to get things started, Seth, you know, we're all here to learn a little bit about yourself and Honest Tea, you know, very exciting organization. Maybe take us back to the beginning and, you know, kind of what led you to the idea and where to go from there in the early stages.
So I've always been, as I said, an activist. I actually was working on Capitol Hill for a period of time up in the Senate. I ran a nonprofit program in Baltimore, sort of an early form of national service, AmeriCorps. And after business school, I had been working for Calvert Group, which is a mutual fund company that does social, environmentally responsible investing. And I was getting an entrepreneurial itch, sort of thinking about what I would want to create next. And one day after a presentation in New York City to a bunch of institutional investors, I got to the cooler and I said, I'm thirsty. And I was with my friend, actually a teammate. I ran track in college. And my friend said, well, what do you mean you're thirsty? There's a cooler full of beverages. I said, there is, but there's nothing here for me. There's all these sweet drinks with tons of sugar. There's all these watery drinks with either you know, no flavor or with, you know, artificial ingredients. There's nothing with 17, 20 calories that's got great taste and not a lot of other junk. And I said, I think I'm going to do something about it. So I got in touch with my professor from business school. His name is Barry, and all the bottles are signed Seth and Barry. And I said, you know, I think I'm ready to do something about this. When I had been his student, we had talked about there was something missing in the beverage industry. And he had just come back from India, where he had done a case study of the tea industry. He had come up with the name Honest Tea, which was the perfect connection for me between my activist background and then a brand name for not just one for tea, but for really a line of beverages that can be authentic, organic, and healthier. And so we brewed up some samples. I brought 5 thermoses of tea that we made in my kitchen to the local Whole Foods office. We had a bottle of an empty Snapple bottle we repurposed and put a label on, pasted it on, and went into the buyer and they said, we want to sell this in your stores. The buyer thought about it. I mean, a lot of other conversation, but he said, well, we'll take 15,000 bottles. And there's this long pause because we'd only made it in my kitchen. And so I said, great. And then I went home and scrambled and we raised money, you know, designed labels, and figured out how we got the tea to the stores.
Wow, that's a great story. What were, you know, thinking back to that first year or two, what were the biggest challenges that you had to overcome?
You know, making a product was a challenge, but the biggest challenge was distributing it. So we made that sale to Whole Foods, we got it in the stores, it was starting to sell well. But we couldn't get anywhere else outside of Whole Foods because we didn't have a way to get it to the store. You can't ship it in the mail. And beverage distributors, you know, the folks who carry Snapple or Arizona, just wouldn't give us the time of day. We were selling a product with a lot less sugar. Maybe it tasted a bit like grass compared to what they were selling. And so we couldn't get to market. And so we found other ways. We went to a cheese distributor that was going to gourmet stores. And then I went to the deli, actually, it's Bethesda Bagels in Bethesda. I said, how do we get to your store? He said, well, you know, talk to the guy who sells us corned beef. So we went to a corned beef distributor called Saddle Foods, and they started bringing it to the delis. And then I went to the supermarkets, and I said, how do we get to your stores? And they said, well, you know, here's our list of distributors. And it turned out the one that was the best distributor for us it's called Surefire Distributors. He's a charcoal distributor. But it works, you just go into the store. So we started to piece together distribution, and then eventually the Snapple distributor in this market said, hey, you know, why don't we talk? Let's try to figure something out. So distribution is key. Great. Still is key.
Yeah. And you recently, somewhat recently, have had some really exciting news with your partnership with CocaCola.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how that came about.
So in 2008, CocaCola approached us about making an investment in Honest Tea, wanting to, you know, they sort of looked at the trends, and they looked at several trends. Certainly one trend was that since 1998, sales of carbonated soft drinks had been declining. But the other bigger trend was they look at the, what they call the mega trends. So you see health and wellness, environmental responsibility, and then corporate social responsibility, all being emerging priorities within corporate America, and all sort of being isolated. But they in their presentation to the board, they showed a map where these three circles all start to converge. They said, this is going to be the standard for how business is done. This was back in 2007. They said 5 years from now, that's going to be the standard for business. And of course, now they're talking about 2012. And they said, this is how we need to move as a company. Honesty is already there. And that's where we need to go. So for them, it's an investment in the future. They bought the company earlier this year in March. And their goal is to make it into the next billion-dollar brand for Coca-Cola. That's my goal too.
That's fantastic. That's exciting. Talk about the I guess, kind of mixing together of cultures. You've got the largest beverage maker in the world, and you're at the time small business, Honest Tea, kind of mixing those two cultures together. How'd that go? What were the struggles?
Well, it's always a little funny. We just today I had some people from Atlanta come up. They're the folks who run Walla, and I was taking them on a tour of our office, which is one room. And we brought them into the kitchen. It's an open room, but I was saying, oh, this is our kitchen and our cafeteria and our R&D facility, and it's basically a countertop. They said, well, we got to talk to our folks. They keep asking. They said they've got like 3 trailers of R&D stuff, and these guys have just a countertop. But we're able to develop drinks. It's tea is a simple product. It's just leaves and water with some. It's all natural, so we don't need chemical. Stations or whatever, we're just making tea. So it's been I think for Coke, it's been an enlightening experience just to see how we work. And what's fun about the way we do things is we come up with ideas, new products, marketing campaigns, and we execute. We move really quickly. And overall, I'd say they've been very hands-off. We did just have an interesting encounter just 2 weeks ago, which to me was the first time we sort of lost what we would have done on our normal fuel. I'll just give you a little background. So the movie The Lorax is coming out in March. It's a great movie. The Lorax is Dr. Seuss' story about the creature who saves the trees. I said, this is perfect for us. It's right on brand. We have a line called Honest Kids, the drink pouches. Danny DeVito's The Lorax, and Zac Efron's The Boy, and Taylor Swift is the girl. It's a whole thing. And it had Dr. Seuss's family had to screen who gets to be associated with the movie, and Honest Kids was approved. But then Coke said, we have a policy, we're not allowed to market to young children. We had cartoon characters. I said, well, I understand why that makes sense for carbonated soft drinks. But for a line like Honest Kids, which is a low-calorie drink, organic, I certainly felt it was worth doing. We were excited about it. But in a big company like that, you have a rule, and I wasn't going to. It was sort of a 2-week time frame that we needed to either make it happen or not, and we lost. So it's a good movie. You should go see it, but we won't be connected to it.
You mentioned the marketing piece, and I know that your firm is well known for its kind of grassroots marketing campaign. Tell us a little bit about your marketing strategy and how it's worked and what's made it great.
Yeah, so I think one of the keys for us, our brand is authentic, our ingredients are authentic, so we want to make sure we're never paying anybody to say something about our product. So we find ways to get the product into people's hands where they have the direct connection with it. And this summer we did something that was a fun experiment. We went to 12 cities around the country. We set up freestanding booths called the Honest Store. And there was a lucite box and a rack of drinks. And it said, Honest Tea, $1 a bottle. It's the honor system. No cash register, no store personnel. And we just wanted to see how honest people were. And of course we created, we told the media about it. And we had, it was on the Today Show. We had, in each city we had sort of it was a media event, tons of coverage. We, actually just on Facebook alone, we started the day at about 31,000 followers. We're over 81,000 now. So we really moved the needle for us in terms of just people being aware of the product. And it was free sampling. We got tons of people trying our products. Some of them paid $1, some paid more. Turns out, by the way, that we've expanded the experiment. I think Honolulu now is the most honest city, 99%. And New York came in around 85%. So watch your wallet there.
Any idea how we do in DC?
DC was good. DC was at 96, 95%. It was I was impressed. So yeah, Boston was 97.
All right, awesome. Very good. And you know, stepping back maybe to the early days a little bit again, I'm sure a lot of the entrepreneurs in the room are, you know, all going about, you know, getting financing.
Yeah.
And you know, dealing with the struggles that come with that. How did you go about getting early financing, and what recommendations might you have?
For us, we stuck with angel financing. It was really key to our business. So from really the first year, we started getting approached by institutional investors who wanted to put money into the company, and they came with all kinds of, you know, fancy advice about how we should be honesttea.com, or we should be an energy drink, or we should be a low-carb drink, just all the, you know, sort of following whatever trends there were. And I'm sure that if they had invested, that would have been, you know, invested and got control, that's where they would have pushed us. But we only took in angel capital, which was very time-consuming, especially because of our structure. We had a complicated equity structure that needed a lot of explaining. But in the end, it was really the key for us, because we raised over 10 years, we raised almost $10 million in angel funding. And because we had done that, it enabled us to keep control, operating control of the company. And so that meant when we were negotiating with Coca-Cola, we absolutely completed the deal we wanted. It meant that we really still have control of the enterprise. And I think it all goes back to the way we financed the company and how we structured it. So there were a lot of times when we were in tight spots, and I'd be on the phone with Barry saying, I don't know how we're going to meet payroll, and he'd either write a check, or, you know, sometimes my father would write a check. It's definitely a tougher road to go. And but at the end of the day, it was a key to our success, and obviously our investors have done pretty well.
Yeah. And I know at one point, as the company started to grow, you actually, I believe, owned and operated your own bottling plant.
Yeah.
So you were really in the manufacturing space of the product. Tell us about that experience.
It was ugly. It was really. I mean, I think the key lesson there was you really need to make sure you're doing what is core to your business, and without going into too much detail, which was agonizing. There were, you know, we lost over $1 million. We were packing other brands as well, and at one point there was a brand we were packing called Aura Potency Punch. And the guy called from Colorado and he said, hey, you know, he went to the news and to the police. He said, there's a penis in my bottle. It wasn't, but it was a little too potent for the punch. It was mold that had grown to look like that. And actually, there is online, you can find it. It does look, you know, a little too potent. So it was very clear to me. We were, you know, the day we sort of got rid of that, it wasn't that liability. It was a big relief. And I think I'm friendly with Tom and Tom from Nantucket Nectars, and they say that once they got out of the distribution business, that's when their business started to grow. So I think a lot of times you find yourself doing things that you may not really be core to what your business is about, and it's often a relief when you're able to move away from that.
Sure. And I know that just kind of coming from my background in the staffing and recruiting industry, where I've been for 11 years, I have to ask the question, you know, from a hiring and human capital standpoint, growth that way, what have been some of the pitfalls, and you know, how are you guys, I guess, how did you always progress?
Yeah. You know, I think one area where if I would do it over again, which I wouldn't, but if I were to, I would have made sure we invested in, for example, there's certain roles that are just critical, and in a beverage organization, you need someone who knows how to make beverages. So we hired for our head of operations someone who was good at logistics, like this person that ran a warehouse and knew how to get, you know, certain ingredients to a certain place. And that cost us a lot of money, because we had early on some terrible production quality problems that cost us a lot of money. Easily would have paid for, you know, 3 times the salary that we ended up paying. So I would try not to take shortcuts on key positions.
Great. Well, great tips and good advice, and obviously congratulations on great success. I guess maybe now we might open it up to the audience for any questions that people might have.
Absolutely, and being the forward-thinking organization that we are using Twitter. So if you want to tweet in your questions, #growth11. And the first one I'll take right now. For Seth Goldman, what are Honest Tea's initiatives for corporate social responsibility?
Oh, thank you. So I want to share with you just a little bit about my thoughts on where change comes from. So I think especially us being located in DC, it's not hard to see that we have some real problems in our society, certainly in our world and in our nation. I think it's also pretty obvious to see that the solutions aren't coming from the federal government. I'm sorry if that's news to you, but it's, I actually, when I was in college, thought I was going to go into politics. I thought that was going to be the way I would help make change happen. And I just see no real sincere desire to make change happen here. And so then you say, well, where is it going to happen from? Where's it going to come from? Well, nonprofits are important. If you think about it, nonprofits within our economy, generally, a generous household is going to give maybe 7% of their household income to charity. A generous corporation is going to give 1 to 2% of their profits to charity. So that's sort of, that's, I won't say the margin, but that's less than 90%. The 90% of the economy that's moving around is in business. And so, Honest Tea last year, we gave away about $700,000 and about $500,000 in product to different, events and charities. About $200,000 in cash to whether it's the Susan G. Komen Foundation or City Year or Bethesda Green, the local nonprofit we created. Those are kind of groups we support. But look, as they say with Watergate, follow the money. So we bought over $32 million in ingredients. So for us, fair trade, we were the first to make fair trade bottled tea, the first to make organic bottled tea. And this helps transform the landscape of the developing world. We can get rid of the toxins that go into those ecosystems, into the bodies of people picking the tea leaves, not to mention the bodies of people drinking the product. Look at where our payroll is. So we spend about $12 million in payroll. That's a lot more powerful than that charity in terms of helping create quality jobs. And then, in terms of retail, we'll do around $160 million in retail sales. So there's money where every time people are buying a product, they're connecting with a healthier product that's better for them. So for us, social responsibility is in the bottle, it's in the beverage, it's in the business, and that's really where we focus. That's where we. So to me, that's where the change is. And we talk about message in the bottle, and for us, the bottle is the message, and the message is the bottle.
I've got another question right here that was whispered in my ear instead of tweeted because we like to be a hybrid sometimes. And the question was, Seth, you and your firm are so committed to sustainable initiatives, but now you're part of Coke. What's your perspective on Coca-Cola's sustainability initiatives, both domestic and international?
Yeah. Well, there's a few interesting things. Number one, I'm not going to pinpoint Coke. I mean, the fact is we are in an economy that's a consumer economy. So what's the definition of consume is to basically devour and destroy. So you're almost already setting up a contradiction if you say we're committed to sustainability, trying to operate in a consumption-based economy. That said, I've been really impressed with what Coke's doing. So one of the innovations that we're excited about is they have what's called a plant-based bottle. So this bottle is a petroleum-based product made with virgin PET, virgin petroleum, as the core ingredient. It is recyclable, but obviously it's not renewable. Coke has just launched something called a plant-based bottle. It's a plant bottle. It's made with it's actually the residue of after you make molasses, and they're able to make that into a recyclable resin. So you've heard of other plant-based plastics, PLA, which is a corn-based, but that's not recyclable, it's compostable. And if you have a commercial composting facility in your backyard, you're all set. But otherwise, it's a challenge. So I think companies like Coke recognize they're in a consumer-based consumption economy, and they're trying to lighten their impact within that fundamental contradiction. I think it's a challenge for any large company. It's been interesting for us to educate them around organics. We've been working on this report about it. We talk about our overall footprint, and they say, well, you make this claim that organics is better for the ecosystem, and because there's no chemical pesticides. And how can you prove that? What do you mean? You just give me the answer. So I think there's still an education going on, but I would say that it's interesting to see how quickly these companies are working. And when we started 13 years ago, we were kind of a voice in the wilderness, and now it really feels like people get it, and it's just a matter of getting sort of getting the momentum behind it.
We have time for one or two more, so this will come from actual Twitter. You own and control a unique and difficult to enforce trademark. How do you balance being a friendly company and being a brand bulldog?
Well, the first thing is, when you call yourself Honest Tea, you're automatically setting yourself up to be shot down. So the one thing we always make sure we do is under promise. The only way you can really be honest is, I would say not to promise anything, but only promise what you know you can back up. So, we don't just tell you this is organic. We rely on the USDA, which is a federally enforced seal for organics. The same with fair trade. We're not going to just say, oh, there's no child labor involved in this product. We have a third-party certification that makes sure that, the gardens are inspected and money's going back to these gardens. So, I think the only way to do it is to be humble. You really have to, we have a mission report we put out annually, and it's really not a cheerleading document. It just says, here's what we're doing, here's our challenges, here's where we're failing. And I think the more humble you are, the easier it is to be honest about it.
One more question. As a beverage company, you're not necessarily technology focused.
True.
How do you balance technology? We've heard so much about social media. That's my own commentary. But from Twitter, how do you balance technology with your own retail and consumer objectives?
Yeah. So just a few things, since this is a closing thought, I'll try to put a bunch in. Number one, I'm not a Luddite, but I don't have a BlackBerry or an iPhone. I just kind of keep a cell phone. And it gives me enough room so I'm not always tied to the business. As a company, we recognize a lot of our consumers are connected, and so we find fun ways to engage them. Earlier this year, actually shortly after the Coke deal was concluded, we put out our own rap video called Rethink What You Drink. I'll just share with you my favorite line. Middle-aged guys rapping, what could be sadder? I'll tell you, Holmes, what you put in your platter. So, ways to find connections with people. And I think ultimately, it's a product. What we're selling is, it's a beverage. It's a drink that people have a lot of choices. And so the more we can connect with people personally, or can connect with people around issues they care about, or through people they care about, that's the way to make an authentic connection. And I will say that it has been much more fun than I anticipated it would be. And a lot more rewarding as a vehicle for change, too. Like, as I said, I thought about going into politics, and I'm just struck by how much compromise there is to the point where things get so watered down. And our drink is watered down on purpose. We're not going to make it sweeter than it's supposed to be, or more watery than it is.
Josh Howard with Robert International will be amazing. Seth Goldman.